And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
All right, attention to roll call.
That's right, everybody. Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. It's 8:05 live Eastern time, and of course, 5:05 at the Pacific Coast. It's bright and early. We have a special guest today, candidate Dimple Willabus, running for New York City Council District 46 in New York. Of course, in Southern Brooklyn. I'm sure a lot of people there grew up in Brooklyn, just like John himself in South Brooklyn. So, Dimple, it's great to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and of course, where you're at this point. Thank you.
Well, first, John and Eric, thank you for your service. And thank you for having me. So just a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Dimple Willabus. I am a mom of 3, grandmother of 1. I'm a wife of a retired military guy, Marine Corps veteran, and currently a lieutenant with the NYPD in the Detective Bureau. So just a little bit about me personally. I'm one of those parents who love to be very active in my children's lives, especially in school. I want to know what they're reading. I want to know everything about them. So starting with being on a PTA, I always encourage parents, join the PTA because you learn so much about your children's education. So over the past, let's say maybe 25 years, because my eldest child is 31, and she is a teacher with the Department of Education. And when she was a child, I was always active with the PTA. I learned so much because, again, it helps to understand from that perspective how to train and teach your children, what they're putting in your children's mind. I want to know that. So from the PTA, I was elected the CEC, which is the Community Education Council President. And what that is a person who overlooks the schools in the Community Education District. So I was able to overlook 38 schools, middle and elementary schools within our district. I was able to vote on which school received capital funding, a few $1 million. As a president, I was able to allocate funding then, and I worked also as the Brooklyn Borough President, Eric Adams, at that time, education appointee for our district. And thereafter, I was appointed with Mayor de Blasio's Education Task Force, which I looked over the entire city on the education space for the CEC, the Community Education Council. We proposed legislation that would impact the education system, throughout Brooklyn and New York City. So other than that, that's just on the little education piece, my impact in the education space. I grew up in Guyana in South America, and one of the things that is paramount and that has actually changed me as a person was the fact that I received a quality education, of which I give credit to my parents and, the education system at the time. So come bringing that to the US, I really wanted to have that impact on my children and their education, because of course, that's a major foundation, having the education background. And like I just said earlier, my oldest child, she is a teacher by profession. She is, an educator. My youngest child is 18. She's the youngest published author in the US. She has 4 published books, and she's a student at Princeton University studying law. Our youngest child, Brandon, he's 15. He is at Poly Prep, a sophomore in high school. So I'm saying all of that to say that before we talk about leadership, we must look at the candidate and the person to see what you've built in your home. That's the first place that you lead. You lead in your home. And if you're not a leader where your business is in art at home, don't come to me and ask me to vote for you. So before I stepped out to be a candidate, I wanted to make sure my business is in art at home. And additionally, I'm a small business owner. I have a master's in journalism from Brooklyn College. I worked at CBS in the newsroom as an assistant editor. But coming from Guyana, 32 years ago, I started the first live television program. The program ran for 10 years before I came here to the US, before finishing my master's at Brooklyn College and then working at CBS. Thereafter, I opened my small business. Granted, I'm a 3rd generation business owner. I opened up my small business in our district, and this is where I was motivated to run for office, because having a storefront, it's kind of like I became a psychologist for customers that came in, because people would vent about, what issues they had, and then, talk about whatever is it is happening. And that was pretty much one of the motivations that kind of guided me to running for office. I have a 2nd master's in education, working with children with disability also. So that's a little bit in a nutshell.
No, yeah, that's a very impressive children. God bless you guys. That's awesome, man. It's very impressive. So Dimple, we were talking a little online before we get into why you were running. You did previously run for office, and you ran at the height of insanity, in my opinion, not only in New York City but in the world. Could you just tell us a little bit about your experiences in like basically pushing against the defund the police movement, and you know what happened there while you were running and who you were running against, and technically right now you're running. For those of you that are on here, we've had Athena Clark on. She's running against Athena Clark in the general election, but right now she's running on the Democratic primary against Mercedes Narcisse, who you had previously ran against, correct?
Correct.
And can you just tell us about that experience?
Sure. So in 2021, I ran for city council because that was an open seat. At that time, Alan Mizell was term limited. So 9 of us ran back in 2021. Unfortunately, like you just described, this was in the heat of the pandemic, the Black Lives Matter movement, George Floyd, everything happened just at the same time. We went from loving our police, taking pictures, you see throughout New York and otherwise, people taking pictures with the police as first responders, who they appreciate. From that, going to the opposite movement of people attacking the police and against the police. So during that time, it was a tough time. I stood unequivocally in my position, and still do, of standing with our family in blue. And that's one of the reasons why I assume that things did not work for me well in my run, because I would not stand against our NYPD officers, because I knew firsthand and secondhand what happens as the spouse. A lot of times you don't hear from the spouse, but trust me, we are psychologists. We're not psychiatrists because we can't write prescriptions, but we're psychologists. We hear everything that goes on, and we're the ones who provide a calm for our spouse. So I ran the last time because I felt that our district really need a true leader. Still, we don't have a leader in our district, in the city council. We still fail to elect a leader. So back then, my story is still the same. I said, the reason I'm running is, like my father said, everybody can come up with a list of problems, but you go into that door that says, this is a door to solve the problem. Nobody's really there. Everybody has a mouth and an opinion on what to do, but stepping into that space to act is where, the difference come in. So that's where I step in and said, okay, let me do this. Let me go. And, I'm vested, I'm battle tested. I'm a servant leader. I have 30 years credential, not 5 years, not 10 years. I'm not just standing at somebody's pantry, posing with a couple potatoes to say that, I'm just volunteering. No, I'm a person who had businesses, nonprofits, and have an impact in my community. There are people out there who grew up watching me on my TV show, who are in their 20s and 30s now, who said they know me, grew up being inspired. I've touched people and moved people to better places. So those are some of the reasons why I ran.
There's definitely a nerve that you hit with myself in a good way. And I could tell you seem extremely confident and competent, but humble at the same time, which I definitely appreciate. And what you keep honing on is what's so important, what we're lacking in New York City right now, especially in this administration, and that's leadership. You talked about leadership in the home. You talked about being an educator and leadership in city council. And that's where we're completely lacking, especially when it comes to this gang database, because we talk about public safety. And I love how you talk about you support your husband, and you actually talk about what's going on in police work, and you support the NYPD. Now, we feel it's complete insanity that they're trying to abolish the gang database, which is an invaluable tool for policing. What are your thoughts on this gang database? Has the city council proven their point that this gang database is discriminatory towards Black and brown? When we have discussed numerous times on this podcast, if you had a chance, how this gang database is an invaluable tool, and it's utilized to monitor and track gang members. It doesn't affect them if they're actually committing any crime, but it does help the people in the city of New York, and it does help in public safety.
Well, Eric, I'll tell you what, ironically, I actually watched that hearing. I watched some of the hearings. I'm cooking, I'm on the street, but sometimes I listen in. And ironically, that day I listened to the hearing so I could take firsthand. One of the challenges we've had with this batch of city council people is the fact that they're there and they have no business being there. Because if you hear the questions that they ask are literally, for the word ignorant questions that they do not do the research prior to the hearing to ask questions that make sense. Because a database was built for a reason. Take a look at me, I'm Indian. If you go to South Queens, if you go to Richmond Hill, you can only arrest people that look like me because those are the people that live there. If you go to Bronxville, right, you're going to only arrest the people who live in Bronxville if they commit a crime. A DV case, whatever case it is, you have to arrest what's there. So a database is built based on crime. So if you go to the Bronx, as they describe it, black, brown, green, orange, whatever color, the point is these are criminals. These are gang members. And what some of these city council people don't understand, they're not on the ground understanding exactly what the cops have to deal with, especially these detectives. They're not in the streets, so they don't really understand what's out there. If they literally walk to their own very district, like the ones who are in the city council who live in Bronxville and East New York, then they'll see exactly what the average person have to deal with. And by the way, why don't you just go in the subway too and see what some of these, constituents got to deal with or residents have to deal with. So I stand with the fact that they should maintain that database because it was built for a reason. And it was built over a period of time. And I say we have the best police department in the world and we have the best detectives in the world, hands down, unequivocally. Yeah, I might be biased, but I can tell you right now that that's how I stand. And by the way, I do international work with so many companies as a consultant. And I've had dealings with, police officers and police departments from different countries. And I'll tell you that people admire the NYPD. And our NYPD officers actually travel to other parts of the world to help build database. So why would you destroy the very database that deal with gang members? These people don't understand what it takes to actually help their community. They don't understand they're destroying those same young people they claim that they're trying to help, because when they have crimes that are compounded, those same young people will end up now facing a larger and bigger charge. Instead of slapping them on the wrist and just sending them home, they're now going to make those same young people have life sentences for killing somebody. And that's on their hands.
So Dimple, before we get into like what's happening now, and I think this is still relevant, 2020, 2021, almost towards the end of 2021, 2 years after the pandemic, we had the officers working throughout the entire pandemic, firefighters working throughout the pandemic, teachers, all municipal workers, sanitation workers. And then 2 years later, Bill de Blasio put a vaccine mandate into place. And Eric Adams was wishy-washy on what he was going to do about it, but he comes in on January 1st and he doubles down. He's like, no, I'm not hiring anybody back. I'm actually terminating people. And he began to terminate more people. Myself and a lot of others have been pushing to compensate, reinstate city workers who were legally denied both religious exemptions and medical exemptions, as well as those who were terminated, in our opinion, illegally, and in the opinion of the courts, illegally as well. Currently, Eric Adams' administration is appealing that court case. Where would you stand with city workers who were terminated or who were forced to leave over denial of religious or medical accommodations?
Reinstate and compensate. Listen, I tell people, you cannot pay someone for their experience. You really can't. Police officers that have 10 years, 15 years who've served, those are minds you cannot afford to lose. And by sending them home is like the worst thing you could do to the NYPD, because now you have a ton of rookies running around with not the experience and knowledge. We can spend 10 years with books. It does not give you the hands-on knowledge that you guys have. So 100% I stand with the teachers, firefighters, and police. And when that was happening, I was so against it. I was saying, this is the most ridiculous thing I've heard. I did not want to even get the vaccine, but I ended up getting the vaccine because my children were forced to get a vaccine. If not, do not come back to school. You are not allowed to come back in school. And I said, this is absolutely ridiculous. I even wrote an email to the principal of school saying, this is outrageous. Why do we have to be forced to take this vaccine? They're like, oh, well, the city is forcing us to force the kids to do this, so we have to do it. Unbelievable. I think this was just the billionaires from the pharmaceutical company all involved with these politicians who they donate to and whatever underhand business. And this was what pressured our good police officers, firefighters, and teachers. And they should be reinstated and they should damn well be compensated, hands down. It's not really a question. That's how it should be. And shame on the courts too.
First of all, you're spot on. That's absolutely, you hit the nail on the head, because what you said is so important and so valuable of what we had to the police department, and that was the veteran police officers that had the experience to pass on the torch. And that's what we lost with this vaccine mandate, which we've talked about numerous times in this podcast, which really weaved into the DEI movement, really spearheaded it for the police department. And so we didn't just lose numbers, but we lost our most valuable, and that was the veterans that could pass on the torch. So we're lacking that right now. And we can see what's going on the streets right now. So let's talk about the streets. What are you seeing in your district that you're running for? What are you seeing pre-pandemic? What are you seeing as we are towards our potential re-election of Mayor Eric Adams? What do you see on the streets? Because we talked numerous times on this podcast about perception control with this administration, how it's perception versus reality, and how this administration is trying to sell this idea that crime is down, and yet we can see with our own eyes and we show our own numbers. So what are you seeing in your district pre-pandemic, and what are you seeing as we speak?
Yeah, that's, the funny thing is, again, we have some city council people who have no business in office. So some of the legislations that they've changed were to water down some of the crime. So some things that were felony now becomes a slap on the wrist. So when we do the data, we see the data looking as though it went down. But you and I both know, you guys and I know, that that's not the case. Crime is still happening. It's still out there. It's not what they're saying. They're just, playing with the numbers and just shuffling things around, saying this is not a felony anymore. This is a misdemeanor, or this is just a death ticket. So things have changed in terms of how they've just changed it. But crime is still happening. We see it, we know it, and we know that this city is not as safe as they like to paint it to be, because people's personal experiences. As me personally, I changed the school my son was going to because I was afraid to have him travel on a train and a bus. I have him going now where the school bus is taking him versus him going in the train and the bus. And even me, I still take the train and the bus. And when I'm there, I'm always, very uncomfortable on the train and the bus. So no, the city is not as how they paint it to be. And until people understand, with 8.45 million people traversing through the city, and understand the amount of police officers compare to the amount of commuters and residents in the city, understand the ratio, they need to come back to respecting our NYPD officers, especially the ones in the street who have to do this hard job, and stop tying their hands behind their back, because that's what it is. They cannot function if you want to tell them, solve crime, but then you're not giving them the tools necessary to solve crime, which is their hands, to help actually be a part of this process. People don't understand. Police are not lawmakers. They are enforcers. They do not make the laws. We have the city council, we have a mayor, and those are the people who are responsible for legislation. Granted, we have some things on the state level, but this is where we have to come back all the time. We have to look at where things are being cooked. It's in the kitchen. The kitchen is in the city council and the mayor's office. So that's it.
All right, so we got 3,800 people with us this morning. Still some people jumping on. We got Dimple Willabus with us. She's a candidate for New York City Council District 46. We're talking about all the issues that she's facing in Southern Brooklyn. So let's get into some of those issues now. We were talking about the homeless shelters that are popping up, the homeless shelters, the migrant shelters, as well as the battery storage facilities. What are the residents of your district facing?
Oh, so I should say this time I decided to run because of one of the crises. We had the illegal migrant encampment at Floyd Bennett Field over a year ago, and a group of us came together from our community. We were just homeowners, people living in the community that said, we need to come together and figure out how do we help with this issue. So we formed a group that we'll call New Yorkers First. And that group, we decided to go out and, have a little march and, try to get press to say, well, look, we want this encampment not to be at Floyd Bennett Field because, one, it's an inhumane space. Two, it's a flood area, and it's a park, it's a national park. And the illegal migrants were not only there, but they were spilling over into our residential community, where they were coming into our yards. They were robbing people. They were stealing from people. And some children could not go to school in our community because they closed the school when it was raining at Floyd Bennett Field. So these children would be housed at the school. So kids could not go to school. Now, that's one of the major crises we had. Now, our elected official, Mercedes Narcisse, at the time said, this is our exact word I quote, "I will not fight a fight I cannot win." However, she did not stand with us. But when President Trump got in office, well, I should say before he got in office, the night he was elected, 2 days later, those illegal migrants vanished. So obviously President Trump heard our cries and concerns in our district and community. And you know what Mercedes did? Her, along with her compadre, Eric Adams, who did absolutely nothing to help us, the two of them popped up at Floyd Bennett Field at a press conference and took credit that they're so happy that the illegal migrants left. Now, that's a slap in our face, the people who actually did the work. So at that moment, that literal moment, that's when I said, that's it. I need to run back for office, because Mercedes was never there. She loved to do photo ops and take credit for things that, you know, we put work into. The second issue is the lithium-ion battery plants. Now, a resident sent me an email, a message saying, Dimple, there's some lithium-ion battery plants coming in Marine Park off of Flatbush and Quinton by Frank's Pizza. I said, what is that? Let me research. Did some research. I drove around the location, took some pictures, did some more research. Come to find out, Mercedes voted for this under the carbon neutrality deal under the City of Yes in December of 2023. Now, NineDot, the company that is bringing these lithium-ion battery plants in our district, had proof and everything showing that everything passed through the City Council for approval. Not just the City Council, but our local City Council member had to support that for it to come to our district. We had a meeting with her, as in the community had a meeting with NineDot and her, and she said that night, I've never heard of this. I don't know anything about this. This was my first time hearing about this. The woman does not know her job. She's been sleeping on the job. We cannot have another Sleepy Joe in Brooklyn. We already have one Sleepy Joe president. We don't need a Sleepy Joe city council person, not on my damn watch. Hell no. That's strike number 2. Strike number 3. 3 months ago, we found out there's a homeless shelter coming in our neighborhood. By the way, in terms of lithium-ion battery plants, there are 2 in Marine Park, 1 in Canarsie, in our physical district. She's disowning the one in Canarsie because she's from Canarsie. But when she voted in December, the lines were not drawn. There, because of the census, the lines were redrawn. And this lithium-ion battery plant that's coming in Canarsie is like a block and a half away from our district. If that explodes, your 1.5 block where your residents live on and your constituents, it will affect everybody. So don't tell me it's not in your district and you don't need to care. The third strike for her was the homeless shelter. We found out 3 months ago that there's a homeless shelter coming in Sheepshead Bay. Mercedes said she never heard of this. She don't know anything about this. Okay, fine. I did some more research. Here we go again. Come to find out, July 28th of 2023, I give you the date, Department of Homeless Services sent an email letting her know that this move from a homeless housing, from housing, affordable housing, to a homeless shelter. And she knew about it. She said she never knew. When I put the stuff on Facebook, then she posted on her page. Yes, I did know. And I did send an email saying that I didn't agree with it. What does that mean, though? You didn't agree with it. Why didn't you educate the community? No, what she put us as a district in, the residents who live in Sheepshead Bay, they were like maybe 10 or 12 residents who have community driveways. So they signed an agreement for an affordable housing. So when we found out on the 6th of May, you see, I'm giving you dates because I was a part of the process. On the 6th of May, when we found out, on the 9th of May, the construction company came to start demolition work into those people's backyard. Now they came with the police to say, well, you have to give them clearance. I said, absolutely not. These people, because these are Chinese Americans who are homeowners and they did not speak English well. So I stood there and I said, no, you can't come in here unless you have an agreement for a homeless shelter. These people agreed to an affordable housing. You're not going to come in. The demolition crew left. These people were sued by West Hab. West Hab, if you follow the money, you'll see West Hab receive, I think it was like $4 billion or whatever. I didn't say million, I said $1 billion to put up homeless shelters throughout the city. And that's why they said that they did follow the process, which is to go through a bidding process. And they got an RFP, a request for proposal, and they got the site. So they did their due diligence. And they said they contacted Mercedes. And she was the one who knew about it, but never told us, never called us to the table. Those residents were sued, went to court, had to pay money out of their own pocket, went through distress, time off from work, all these things. Thank God they won the case. That's Mercedes' third strike. By the way, there's lots more. We're number 5 on the list throughout this whole city of tax liens. People were losing their homes left, right, and center in this district. Most of them live in her district, well, where she physically live, in Canarsie. Over 800 and something homeowners lose their homes because of tax liens. So these are things we need to address. Those are some of the problems we have.
You know what? I can tell you this. I love your passion because what I hear from you, it sounds real and it sounds genuine. So if you're active or retired law enforcement, you're a friend and listener to this podcast, give Dimple Willabus a shout. If you're still in New York City, especially in her district, give her a vote. I mean, you're pro law enforcement, pro common sense. You actually care about the people. You know what? A lot of times we hear on this podcast opposition. Why do you guys still care? We hear it all the time. John, why do you care? You don't live in New York anymore. Eric, why do you care? You don't live in New York. And I'm traveling the entire world. I'm on the opposite side of the country right now. I care. Not only do I care because I was a New York City resident, but my mother lives in Brooklyn, and she lives in your district, and she lives in Sheepshead Bay, which is close enough to this homeless shelter that you're talking about. And I speak to my mother all the time, and she tells me it feels different. She sees it. She can feel it. I mean, she's in her 70s, and she says just even the aura is different. Crime has changed. It's gotten worse. She feels it. Sheepshead Bay was such a great place to live, and it's changed completely. So what you're saying just rings true because I hear it from my own mother. So I appreciate so much. So what's going on right now with public safety? We hear from Jessica Tisch, the police commissioner, that they started what's called Q teams, where they're going to address quality of life. And we talked about how it's something that's old that they made new. It's the same horse, just different color. So they're supposed to address quality of life. And you're talking about quality of life concerns in your district. What other quality of life concerns do you have from your residents right now? What are you seeing on the streets? We talked about before offline. We talked about e-bikes and scooters. What other quality of life concerns are you seeing as crime is going up? There's no doubt about it. We can't escape that. What are you seeing? What are you going to tackle at this point?
You know, I'll tell you what. On my block, there are about 8 houses that were sold. So, Eric, I got to tell you, I don't even know some of my neighbors because people are running anywhere but staying. Honestly. So some of the issues people have, they do not feel safe. I tell people, safety evolves around everything. Before you look for a job, you look for a safe community to work. Before you rent a house or apartment, let me look for a safe community. Before you purchase a house, safety. Before you send your kids to school, safety. People leave their district and their community to travel to take their children to a better school for safety, number one. So you cannot run. You cannot keep putting money into fixing something that is broken. We have to fix the actual issue, which is on the legislative front, right? So the quality of life issues, to answer your question that we have in the district, is a multitude of stuff. Again, safety. Seniors, we have a lot of seniors. We have a lot of retirees who live in our community. We have a lot of, 9/11 survivors who are suffering from all kinds of ailments that are still struggling to deal with crime, that are still struggling to deal with, in our area, not only the e-bikes, but also we have like the dollar vans that are parked up everywhere you could think about. And, these people are very combative who drive these vehicles. You have to be very mindful and careful. And they pull up on your block, 5, 6 deep, and they expect to stay there and park. So we have different issues. But again, until we address the issue, we will continue to lose New Yorkers. And then we'll continue to have the socialists coming in from every corner, from California, from Wisconsin, from everywhere else. The ones who the parents never give them a good spanking, the ones who are spoiled, those are the ones get thrown at us in New York. And those are the ones who are teaching our children. Those are the ones who are in the damn city council. And those are the ones who need to get out. But unfortunately, this is a movement we've seen. We've seen good people, good citizens leaving New York. And we've seen an influx of out-of-state and out-of-towners who come here and want to act as if they've been living here forever. I want to tell us how to do our business and how to raise our damn children. To hell with that. So we have a lot of, issues going. John, I couldn't hear you. I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. I was having noise out. I muted myself. What are your thoughts on the city of yes? The Adams administration and many Democrats are celebrating this as a huge victory for New York City. What are your thoughts on it personally? As a resident of New York City, as someone who's running for office, like what do you think about the City of Yes program?
So John, only this Sunday, we had a big rally and the 3 things against Eric Adams and against Mercedes. 1,500 people came out to rally against Mercedes Narcisse, the city council person for District 46, and Eric Adams, who need to go. So those things were, number one, no to the City of Yes. the lithium-ion battery plant, and the homeless shelter. Now, addressing the city of Yes, I do not support the city of Yes because this is a developer's dream. This is Eric Adams and his compadres who've probably pumped a lot of funds into his campaign to get him into office. So now, of course, this is a payback. So this is the foolishness we have to deal with in New York City. People don't have enough tenacity to talk the truth. When, the truth is a very painful thing. Not all the time it come out nicely and sounds very political or polished, but sometimes you have to just say what's right. And saying what's right sometimes don't always sound good, right? So I was at a protest or rallies, you name it, against the city of Yes. And they, as you know, the Common Sense Caucus in the city council, they held a press conference and they're actually doing a lawsuit against the city of Yes. I stand with them. If I was in the city council, I'll be standing with Joanne Ariola and the rest of the Republicans, Independent, Democrat, because this is not a Democrat, Independent, Republican issue. This is an issue that would affect all of us and destroy our residential community, because us here in Southern Brooklyn, we're being attacked because we are middle class, working class people. Don't tell me to apologize because I'm a middle class, hardworking New Yorker. Don't dare tell me to apologize. I'm not apologizing for working hard, busting my behind, me and my husband, for whatever little we have and however we scrape to make life better for our children. Don't damn tell me to apologize. I'm not living in an apartment building. I did that before. My life has changed. So don't come to me attacking me to tell me my one family has to go up because you and your developer's friend, sold the city out. Give me a break. So that's my feeling on the city of Yes.
There's no doubt about it. You're extremely likable because you're genuine and you're passionate. You show it. And that's what's great. There's a lot of support. I don't know if you're looking at the comments from our friends and listeners on the podcast.
No, I don't have my glasses on. I can't barely see. But
I'm letting you by the way,
Eric, I was trying to look cute, so you just put me on the spot. No, I can't read. So now we're so.
Listen, I feel better. Lately, I realized I'm like, wow, I really am getting older because anything close to me, like everything's so blurry. I've been going like this. My wife's been laughing at me, but I definitely need reading glasses. I'm getting to that point. But you got a lot of support here from our friends and listeners, and there's no doubt about it. You're extremely likable, and I love the fact that you talk about common sense. And what you said is so great. You say you'll stand with Joanne Ariola. You don't care about Democrat. You don't care about Republican, conservative. What you care about is the community, and it's great. You talk about homelessness, and here you are. You've migrated to this country, and you care about Americans first, and you care about your community. That's what's so important here, especially with public safety. I think crime is the most important thing we have to tackle at this point. Especially Eric Adams talks about the key to prosperity is crime, and crime is just completely deteriorated and under this leadership with this administration. So what is your plan? How do you, since you spoke about that, how do you intend to communicate and work with city council members? Especially, we have some city council members just are completely radical and just there's no common sense there. You have the Common Sense Caucus. How do you plan to move with the city council? Obviously, you talked about your alliance here. You would work with Joanne Ariola. But how do you intend to work with opposition city council that it just completely has just a radical ideas that just completely don't work for crime in New York City?
Again, it comes back to education. Not because somebody is elected mean they're educated. Not because somebody is elected mean they understand the issues. A lot of people who are in office have no business there, like I said earlier, because there's somebody behind them who's pushing them to get elected because they have an agenda. The person behind who is actually controlling a puppet is telling them how to vote, is telling them what to do. So the goal is to try to expose both sides of the coin, because a lot of times I think that they really lack the understanding of how they're destroying. And I make it personal. If you have a grandmother, if you have a child, if you want to leave something, a legacy for your children, you have to be able to understand the destruction of what you're doing and the negative things that you're planting now and down the road. A lot of them, when they're voting, they vote based on impulse, not thinking long term and rationalizing exactly how they voted, right? So in working with anybody who's a radicalist or however, it's just to calm them down to understand prior to, because I like to do my homework. If I'm not familiar with something or a space, I like to read and research before. None of these hearings pop up on you. You as a city council person, it's not like you're going to read through 1,400 pages, because that's the excuse some of these city council people want to make. Oh, I voted for the city of Yes because, or some legislation. Oh, because it's 1,400 pages. And so what? You're paid to do that. That's your job. Then why you take this job? Get your staff who is an attorney, because every office has an attorney. Get the attorney, read it, interpret it, and regurgitate it to you. They can't do that, fire them, hire somebody else. And if you don't know how to read, use an app to help you to read. It's that simple. So to answer your question, Eric, it's pretty much, trying to bring to their attention, this is some of the issues and these are some of the negatives. Because just like when you're a teacher and when you're in school, you have to be able to teach your students, the ones who are against certain things, and it's something negative and they don't understand. It's just kind of show them, listen, these are two sides of the coin, and this is what's going to happen if you don't vote along these lines. They may or may not agree, because in the city council is usually a lot of negotiations. You vote for my bill and I'll support your bill. If you support this, I'll support this. That's how it works. And to answer your question, additional, Eric, I hope some of them are actually voted out this time, and some of them will be term limited, right? Some of those socialists will be term limited. So hopefully we have a batch of city council people who are coming in, who have their head on their shoulder and not bought and bossed. Because the one we have here is bought by Uber and Airbnb and bossed by the political elitists.
Dimple, you kind of like, the first time that I know of it, I don't know that this hasn't happened before. We've had candidates like Bob Holden, Democrat, member of the Common Sense Caucus, but you're the first candidate that I know of that is running on the Democratic line, but endorsed by the Conservative Party. Why do you, I hear it, but why do you believe that the Conservative Party endorsed the Democrat?
Because, John, back in the day, I don't know about you, but you couldn't tell the difference between a Democrat and Republican. It used to be so aligned there. And, you have a conversation with somebody, you're like, what are you, a Democrat or Republican? You couldn't tell. Now there's such a wedge. I'm so embarrassed sometimes because I have to hide when I say, some people say, what are you? When I say Democrat, but then I run and like, don't shoot. Because people want to kill you, because they're right. Because the Democrats have been a disgrace. And I beg people to listen and understand that it's not about a line you're running on. For me, hear what it is. In this district, there are 57,000 registered Democrats and there are 9,000 registered Republicans. Do the math. I'm a Democrat. I'm running in a Democratic primary, but I am not the mindset of these Democrats who don't have a brain and common sense. I'm a common sense Democrat and a common sense candidate, period. I did wish they would move away with party lines, this two-party line system, and just have people run, candidates run based on merit. What do you bring to the table? Who are you? Tell me about your background. What is your education? What is your experience in legislation or leadership? Tell me, who are you? That's what I want to play, the place that people get to. A lot of people are ignorant towards the process simply because it's by design, lacking the knowledge and understanding of what's happening. When I travel to our district and tell people we have a primary, first of all, they don't understand what's a primary, and they didn't even know it's an election. I said, the same election you're going to vote for mayor, that's the one I'm going to be on. And you have to break it down and explain it. So one of the things in my district that I really want to focus on in terms of the youth is actually providing comprehensive education. In fact, New York education, when children graduate from high school, and I say everything that I tell you are facts. I'm not telling you anything based on my opinion. These are facts. Students, I'll speak slower here. Students who graduate from high school cannot write a comprehensive essay. And when they try to go to college, they have to do remedial courses so that they can function. And still they drop under 3.0 GPA to survive, to scrape through college, because they scrape through high school so they don't show failure rate. They just push these children through. I believe in a comprehensive education for all children leading up to high school. I believe in service too. I took my son, our congressman had an event for all the service branches of the military were there. And I was hurrying my son, rushing my son, hurry, let's get out of the house because I want to take you to this event. It's going to be packed. I'm pushing him, hurrying. When I got, I was like, do they have this event still? I put the door open. There were 4 parents. Why is this not overcrowded with parents? These are opportunities for children out of high school who don't want to go to college, go into the military. The benefits are there. They pay for college. So, there's so much things we could talk about and issues that I can, like my contribution, if I were to be elected. And I hope, I'll tell you something, I'm up against a lot. I'm a grassroots candidate. And I tell people, in my corner is Jesus and the voters. Jesus is my political club. Jesus is my everything. Because when I say Jesus, because I'm up against spiritual warfare, and an attack from every corner of the globe. So if I come back on this, if it's God's plan for me to win, I'll come back and we'll talk about it. They mean the people got the message, they understand the assignment, and they use their superpower to vote. Other than that, I tell people also, who you vote for, that's what you deserve.
You know, we talk about that on this podcast all the time, Dimple. I'm so glad that you said that. That you have to get familiarized, educate yourself on who you're going to vote for, because it's so important, especially on the local level. And what I learned myself, especially through the later years in my career of policing, but especially now in retirement with this podcast and getting more into understanding politics, especially at the local level, that your local politics affects your daily life much more than what's happening on the federal level and what's going on in the entire country. There's no doubt about it. And that's why we have to get educated. And what you're saying is to educate the people, get those boots on the ground. We got a comment here from one of our friends, and I think he's spot on, because there's no trust anymore on politicians, especially at the local level. Mikey G. Metal Detective Long Island says, I wish you all the luck in the world getting elected to city council in New York City's successful of corrupt politicians. And that's what you're saying here, is that we've lost this trust in our politicians because those lines are blurred between Democrat and Republican as far as what's common sense and what's good for the people. It's unfortunate. It's come to the point that there's just complete opposition. If you vote Democrat, you should feel and operate a certain way. If you vote Republican, and the lines are blurred in New York City, we can't tell who wants common sense and what exactly they're headed for. And that's where I agree with you. Years ago, there was Democrat and Republican, and the similarities that they wanted a good New York City quality of life, that unpolished, that grit of New York City that we're real proud of. But we're standing on, it's just become a different decade. It's moving in a direction that we're not proud of. And that's why we have that great escape. It's not a viable place to live anymore. Obviously, it's a place to make money. It's just not a viable place to live.
100%.
And we see, you talked, right, exactly, lack of leadership. So we see under Eric Adams, we have 4 police commissioners. So right now with Jessica Tisch, what are your thoughts on how the police commissioner is operating right now, her public safety platform? Do you believe that she's actually running the police department, or do you see Eric Adams as the commissioner? What do you see? Because we see extreme failure at the leadership level from the New York City Police Department, and especially, we say it all the time, that leadership leads to Eric Adams. What are you seeing? What are your thoughts on the leadership within the police department and this administration?
Well, in regards to the new commissioner, she, of course, her name alone says a lot. Just her last name says a whole lot without saying a whole lot. And I personally believe there's a body of people who are advising her, because even though she worked in a civilian position before within the NYPD, I believe, her coming back and working in this capacity is just a matter of a good hookup, if you will. And, she is being advised by this body of people who, I guess their decisions that they're making is based on whatever advice they're giving her. Like you were talking about the Q team, the quality of life team. The quality of life cannot be improved unless, certain things change within the legislation. Again, we come back to legislation. It all come back to, the legislative piece of it to change things. But I do believe that Eric Adams' administration has been a failed administration, because if you look at him and his good old boys from Queens, who he tried to hook up, and all of them end up just behind bars on the opposite side because of some, bad decisions. And I understand people trying to take care of their good old friends, because they look at them as people who we grew up together in Queens or whatever the story is. And I want to bring my friends back out of retirement, bring my brother back out of retirement. But you have to make sure, if you're going to take care of people, you look out for people who understand and have the credentials to put into those positions so that they can act effectively and efficiently. So by forcing the education chancellor to retire before his time, the Friday he stood at a press conference saying, the mayor is trying to get me to retire before the end of the month. I don't want to retire today, Friday. I want to retire at the end of the month. But he's forcing me to retire today. I remember listening to the press conference. So you can't be putting the wrong people in place to do the job. They're going to fail because they're not going to be effective in those positions. But to answer your question, I don't believe this administration has done our city, due diligence. And I think that, with a new administration, hopefully, we're in a position where the commissioner of police, I know she's trying and she's doing her part. But again, I don't believe it's never, ever the commissioner per se. There's a physical person that make those decisions. There's some bodies of people who make that decision. But I also want to come back to something John had asked me. Why do I think the Conservative Party endorsed me? So I was endorsed by the Conservative Party, and I also spoke with the Republican Party, and they said to me that they would support me behind the scenes and they would love to endorse me. But I'll tell you straight up, for the first time, I'll say it publicly, but they did not want to come out and endorse me because they were afraid of getting heat because I'm a Democrat. But, you know, behind the scenes, they never endorsed another candidate. In this race, the Republican Party did not, I repeat, did not endorse a candidate. Even though there's a Republican candidate, the person's coming out of a different club, but they're not endorsed by the party. So that's the piece in terms of endorsement. From the Conservative side, they endorse me because they realize that I'm a candidate who has common sense and, again, who's vested and tested. And I also challenge Mercedes, since she cared so much for the community, to come and meet me in a debate. She's running from me. I challenge her for the second time here. Meet me on the top of a roof in a basement. I'll come in your turf in Canarsie. I'll come and stand 12 o'clock midnight, 6 o'clock in the morning. Let's have a debate on your terms. And I also challenge her, since she cares about our community. I want you to go 1 year without receiving a salary. I can do it. 1 year without receiving a salary. Do it because you care about your community. Let's put community first. Go 1 year without a salary, so we see how you're gonna pay for that G-Wagon. That's $200,000.
So I'm assuming you're not afraid to debate any of your opponents, and you would be open
100%.
to debate.
100%. I mean, I've been trying to get her in a debate because I think it's only respectful to the constituents that you tell them what you bring to the table. You're the incumbent. You're there. Back your record up. Back your failed record. Everything legislatively dealing with public safety and policing, she has voted against our police, voted against legislations that dealing with public safety. And she's bought and bossed. I said already, she's received $122,000 from Uber and Airbnb. These are not my opinions. These are facts. These are public records. So if unions should be careful supporting Mercedes Narcisse, because Uber and Airbnb do not support union workers. The reason why they're supporting her is because they do not stand with unions or union-related concepts or philosophy. So they're pumping money into these city council people who they know they can buy and control. So Mercedes need to come and stand next to me and debate me and back a record up. Tell me how you're going to change what you've done before. By saying you're sorry and sleeping on the job since 2022 does not tell me that you've done your damn job. You're failing in our community. You've destroyed our quality of life, and you've single-handedly destroyed our community. And when trust is broken, just like a marriage, you cannot mend it with some duct tape.
So we got about 6,000 people on here this morning. Thanks for joining us. If you go over to our YouTube at The Finest Unfiltered, if you could like, subscribe, you'll see all the links for Dimple Willabus's social media, as well as a link to contribute to her campaign. So for those of you that are in Southern Brooklyn, if you want to contact Dimple, is there another way besides social media that you would like to be contacted, or through your campaign?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn. I have a website, a landing page, and it's www.dimplewillabus.com. Just dimplewillabus.com. And the reason why I didn't put a whole lot of information, because in 2021, we spent weeks building a website, and everything platform that I put there, somehow magically my opponent was able to regurgitate my information as if it's hers. So I said this time, no, if you want me to answer a question, ask me, I'll speak it. So it's not written there, and then nobody could copy and paste and try to speak my information. So go ahead, Eric.
Listen, got a great comment here. It comes from Rob Lucas. He's for the Finest Unfiltered family. I think it's a great comment. I can't agree enough. He says, after watching you for 50 minutes, I wouldn't debate you as a candidate either. You are on point. I find that you're extremely tough. I think you have grit, but you're extremely articulate at the same time. You know, it's interesting what you said, because, excuse me, we talk about this all the time, right? And we talk about the party lines in New York City, right? And it's obvious you gave the numbers, and I love that you speak factually. You gave the numbers on how many registered Democrats there are in comparison to Republicans. Do you think the tides could change in New York City? If someone was to run as a Republican in your district, do you think there's a chance we could ever actually have a Republican win with your ideology, with your common sense, with your views? Do you think we could move to that point? It's obvious that running as a Democrat is the better strategy. But do you think the tides could change in New York City, especially in a district as such as yours?
So if that was the case, I'd be a Republican running. But unfortunately, currently, because of how the district is set up and cut, if certain parts of the district is cut out, then yes. Because us here on this end, we are common sense homeowners, community-minded, vested people. Mill Basin, Bergen Beach, Garrison Beach, most of the district is really aligned with my philosophy and ideology. But there's a certain part of the district that is the majority of the Democratic votes come from, that segment of the community, that heat map area of votership. We have to pay attention to that heat map, and that's heavy Democratic. So, and then we have to talk about the percentage of votership. There's only 8% of the votership that comes out at any given time. And when you look at even like, we have literally a handful of people who show up on the Republican side. They talk a good talk, but when it's time for voting, the Republicans do not show up on the polls. If you look at the poll, because last time I ran in 2021, one of my the people who ran against me, him and I are friends now, and you know we have the same ideology because he was from Marine Park, and he ran as conservative and supported by the Republican, and he ran in that Republican line, and he did not receive substantial, votes to put him over the edge. And I tell people, in the general election, you can vote for anybody. You can vote for a Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever other line, a conservative in the general, but still they did not vote to push him over, and he was that Republican endorsed candidate. So to answer your question, not right now. People are not ready to move in that level until we cut out a certain part of the district. Then that's it. But again, people ask me all the time, how are you registered as a Democrat and you speak this way? But I explain to them, we have to we have to understand the ideology behind the numbers and where it stands, and historically how things have been, and looking at the numbers now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with one thing you said so far. So let's talk about let's go back to public safety a little bit. So there's a big push about involuntary removals off a street, and that's related to homeless or mentally ill people that are left, basically, in my opinion, to die on New York City streets or in New York City subways. There's a big push by a lot of members of City Council, including Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, where they don't believe that the NYPD should have the ability to involuntarily remove someone that they feel is a danger to themselves or others and bring them to a hospital facility for a medical evaluation. Now, we're not arresting these people. We're not throwing them in jail. Well, currently, Eric Adams is arresting these people, but not the cops don't go out there on their own fruition and lock up someone for being homeless or drug addicted. What we've always done in the past prior to this new push is we would, if we felt that you were a danger to yourself or others, let's just take, for example, it's a winter night in New York City, it's -5 degrees, and there's a guy with no shoes on and he's refusing to get off the street. We would then call an ambulance and involuntarily take that person to the hospital for a medical evaluation. What are your thoughts around that?
See, here we go again. The police is everybody's scapegoat. During the pandemic, police were forced. If somebody take off a mask or they don't have a mask on, go and arrest them. Police, everything. Go and take care of the homeless. Go call the police. Take care of this problem. Every problem the police has to take care of. The police have a million jobs. Wait a minute, why did they stop that person? They didn't have a helmet on. Did you see that person in a cell phone? No. Every single thing the police have to do, they're in a position. This is why it's so hard to hire anybody with the NYPD. This is why they dropped the standards to get into the NYPD. And I don't remember, I stand corrected, it's Nassau County that says that we're not hiring anybody who drop their standards. Even if you drop your standards with the NYPD and you come over here, our standards still remain the same. You cannot be doing this to the NYPD, giving them all these tasks. And then the city council initially had agreed that they have these medical professionals to replace the NYPD. What they should do is call those medical professionals who they agree that should be taking care of people to get them to be removed. Because if the police see somebody that is a harm or in danger to the residents there, then they should be removed. They should be removed, and that's how it should be. Because I remember being on a train, and there was a woman, had no pants on, and was urinating on the train. This is someone who you look as though she was homeless. So how do we deal with a situation like this? The first thing people do is call the police. When the police came, and the police now have to remove somebody, there is no pretty term of removal process if somebody don't want to go. I remember watching a cop demonstrate. He just took a random person out of the crowd and was showing some kids. Let me show you how it works if you're trying to arrest somebody, if they don't want to be arrested, trying to get their arm. It's difficult. So it would not look pretty. You may have to get a person on the ground and you may be shuffling around, but you're trying to get a person to put their hands behind their back voluntarily. But if they don't want to cooperate, you have to find a way to do it. So that woman was, arrested and removed just, from the space because she was urinating in the train. So these are some of the circumstances. Then you see everybody pull out their camera instead of have the understanding. You want a safe and clean community. You don't want to see homeless people in the train. So how are we going to do this? By using a magic wand is not going to solve the problem. You think the police really want to be removing somebody who has no pants on and urinating on the train? You really think so? You think they'll leave the morning of work saying, today I'm going to go and shoot somebody. Today I'm going to go pick up this woman with no pants on. I have to touch her butt and everything to go. And no, nobody does that. So police have to deal with some of the, I could not be a police. I remember over 20 years ago when my husband told me, you should join the NYPD. I said, no way. 20 years ago, he said, and then fast forward 10 years later, I was in my 20s and 30s. And he's like, well, time up for you. You can't join the NYPD anymore because you're too old at that point. And I said, yep, I can't do the job. I commend every person in uniform. I stand with you and I respect you. I understand in every profession, they're good, bad, and indifferent. But again, we still have to look at the numbers, and dwindling numbers of the NYPD has dwindled to maybe under 30,000 because we still have to look at those people who are on the path to retirement that haven't gone to the door yet, that they're still factoring in with their numbers, right? And this is 8-point-something million people, and the laws are up in the air, police being punched in the face, and they just get slapped on the wrist and they're out the door. Police have to do so much unnecessary work that is unbelievable, unacceptable. And on top of it, then Jomani Williams want to tell the police, do more writing. You have to do more writing here for every time you stop somebody. Camera in your chest, go online and Google John Smith, cop. You see the cop's number, how much money they make, how much CCRB complains, all these things. And then put in CCRB to be in control also of, certain things. It's wasting time. Come on already. When I was the president of the Community Education Council, CCRB contacted me and said, we'd like to come into schools to speak to the kids. I said, why? Oh, we want to tell the kids how to protect themselves against the police. So I said, why don't you come up with a plan on how to teach these children how to write comprehensively when someone comes in a room who is a retired military person? Teach them how to say thank you for your service. Let's get back to the place of respecting our police, our teachers, our parents, and then we could talk about that. Because when people don't take care of their business in their home, that's when it spill over and police have to deal with it in the streets. And that's something people don't address. Let parents take care of their responsibility. A lot of parents don't take care of their kids and don't want to deal with the kids, and that's how they end up in the street, right? And that's what the police have to deal with. This is another, one of the jobs of the police. They have to deal with everybody's problem. They have to nurse and nurture everybody else's issue. Parents who don't take care of the kids, people who are, on the streets, homeless, and whatever the case is. I want to mention something on the record. I do believe that people who are homeless deserve to have a home. I do not believe in temporary solution to things that should be permanent. I believe in affordable housing that is actually affordable, and people who are homeless or displaced because of a fire, because of a flood, unfortunate issues or circumstances should be in an affordable housing setting. A homeless shelter that serves a family for 6 to 12 months is not a solution to the homeless crisis. Now, let's talk about the homeless situation. There's no kitchen in a homeless shelter, right? So that parent, that mom with that 2 kids who's in a room is in Manhattan, but her kid now have to go to Brooklyn to school. So that parent will have to wake up 1 o'clock in the morning, travel from Manhattan to Brooklyn. That child or children have to get acclimated into that community and culture. By the time you know that, they're getting pulled from there and shifted to, another, like say Staten Island, get accustomed to that new space. But if you provide an affordable housing setup where a mom can actually stay in that community, the kids can actually know their peers and get acclimated to that school, those are things that could really help solve the homeless crisis. But trying to put people who are homeless, just have them going from shelter to shelter, yes, it's actually more money. The city makes more money, and these big, establishments and developers and whatnot make more money, but it does not solve the homeless crisis.
I love the topics that you segue into here, especially when it comes to Civilian Complaint Review Board. It's near and dear to me. I've been coined as the most complaint cop, targeted by an overzealous Civilian Complaint Review Board. Just want to say, like, share, and subscribe, everyone. Check out www.dimplewillabus.com. Help out, volunteer, contribute to her campaign. She's extremely articulate, passionate, knows her community. So let's go back to that. We're talking about potentially involuntary removing homeless or someone who's emotionally disturbed. And I think it's extremely necessary that we do that in New York City, because sometimes people cannot help themselves and they need an authority to help them, and the police to step in to make sure that they're not in the cold. It's my opinion, based on anecdotal experience and some factual information, that most people that are homeless are either emotionally disturbed, some type of mental illness, or either suffering from some substance abuse. It's pretty tough in this country just to be homeless. Are there some homeless? Yes. But those numbers are pretty minuscule when we actually compare it to who's emotionally disturbed with mental illness and substance abuse. So we talk about the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Now, when it comes to the Emergency Service Unit helping police officers remove someone who's involuntary or potentially combative, they're getting substantiated complaints from the Civilian Complaint Review Board. So the Civilian Complaint Review Board has been a hindrance to police officers doing their job from removing these emotionally disturbed persons, homeless, from the streets, including myself. So what are your thoughts on the Civilian Complaint Review Board as being a separate entity? Do you think the Civilian Complaint Review Board should be revamped? Should it be part of the NYPD? What are your thoughts about, we've heard from Jim Walden, if he gets elected, potentially having it under a new public safety plan? Because what I see, John and myself, we attend virtual meetings on a monthly basis. We haven't in a while, but we've been busy, and my son was sick and I lost my son. But we were attending a virtual meeting on a monthly basis, and what we see is complete just disdain and bias for police work. So what are your thoughts on the Civilian Complaint Review Board on the path forward?
All right. First of all, I didn't want to say it, but I'm sorry to hear about the loss of your son. I'm not going to press on the subject, but I just want to say that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So regarding the CCRB, they're definitely on that 10th floor in that building. I remember going up the elevator for something else on another floor, and I saw the sign saying CCRB on the 10th floor. But the resources that are pumped in to a case, I understand there's need for review. I understand there's need for evaluation in certain cases, but the over scrutinizing of police officers while they do their job. I mentioned earlier about having your hands behind your back. This is a clear case of it, because you have to spend time with an attorney, and they have to spend time. You have to take time off from work to sit in a room, to be interrogated, and go through that whole process as a cop, when you could be on the streets serving the community. This is why you come to work, to serve your city and community. But you have to sit down now dealing with the CCRB case. Then some people are being modified. So you have to stay behind the desk there, whatever your crisis is, whatever situation to put you in. So I do believe the CCRB is obviously biased. It's clear because, you see it. A lot of cops receive CCRB. This sometimes hinder their, the evaluation may hinder their promotion. Who knows how it hinder them in terms of their movement, laterally or otherwise towards their progress. But I do feel as if that it needs to be it needs to be where the police have a more stake in, advising, like working on an advisory board or something with the CCRB to kind of understand how we can lessen the CCRBs, because they have to understand the limits. Because when you look at a video also of a cop doing an arrest, and how things look and how it sounds, it's never really pretty. You have to be able, if someone stands and you say, stop, whatever the police usually say, stop, you've been arrested or whatever, and you put your hands behind your back willingly, people will go. That's never the case. So if that video shows differently or whatever the case is, and the cop gets a CCRB and they lose vacation days or whatever the case is, I mean, while that's sad to some degree, these are some of the things that why people don't want to be hired by the NYPD or even join the NYPD, because they feel as if it's a job that is just, not worth the time, and it's just too stressful. I do believe that while I don't know a whole lot of details behind the scene, I do believe that it do need to be reevaluated. And the city council, I know the city council has been pushing more for more power for the CCRB to have like a penalty kind of way for cops. So I feel as if that need to be removed, and it need to be like a support system with the NYPD working in conjunction probably with the CCRB board to better evaluate what the laws are and what police should be doing in a more conversational kind of way instead of wasting police time again and resources. There's a lot of money goes into these attorneys and court cases. Some of these CCRB, some of these cases go into court and they long and drag out. And they also appear online for every cop. So you see all the CCRBs line up, like 20 CCRB. And if you're one of those cops who are in the street and you're working, you'll get more CCRBs because you're interacting more people. The more you interact with people, the more, especially, if you're in SNU, if you're in certain units, you're going to be doing that. DV cases too. So again, I don't know a whole lot about it, but I will support some kind of body where we can have a conversation that's not an attack on the police, but just understanding that I understand that
you know a lot about police work. You even know SNU. Your husband's educated you well, which is Street Narcotics Enforcement Unit. You have a great insight to police work. There's no doubt about it. You got a perspicacious mindset when it comes to police work.
Thank you. It's been some decades.
So, Dimple, we got a question from the audience. Janine Aquafreda. She's actually a candidate for Brooklyn Borough President, former guest on the show. She asked, "Hi, John and Eric. What is your plan to strengthen public safety, support small business, and make housing more affordable?"
So, in the public safety piece of it, we talk a lot about it. And again, throwing money at stuff. For example, the violence interrupters. Throughout New York City, you guys will know the violence interrupters is what I call flushing money down the drain, because that funds can actually be used for so many other resources. Everybody's hitting and talking about overtime for police, especially detectives. I want to give a big shout out to our detectives. Again, I said it, but I said it again. The best detectives in the world are the NYPD detective, and the best police department in the world is the NYPD. So coming back to the issue of public safety, we cannot run from legislation. Legislation and laws is what govern a city and a country. So in order for us to combat crime in the railway, we have to hit it nose on, which is on the legislative front. We have to change such as legislation. This will attract more individuals to be hired by the NYPD. So the attrition rate will be steady and people will not be trying to run out the door, not even ready for retirement. That's on the public safety piece of it. When you go into the supermarket or a certain pharmacy, you see it's all cage up and glass up. That's because of public safety. People feel as if when they go into, like these kids just go into the pharmacy, swipe the shelf, and there's no consequences. Until there are consequences, people's actions, then this is not going to be fixed. So in terms of public safety, for that person that asked the question, we have to change things on the legislative front, and then we'll start seeing if there are consequences, firm action. Just like a kid. You put a kid by a stove and they put their hands too close and they feel the heat, they're not going to go back there because they know there's some heat by that stove. On the part with small business, to answer that part, as a third generation small business owner and a current small business owner, there's so much we can do in our community and the city. Small business service is only physically, they have a location in Manhattan, but we don't have hubs in our local communities. Having those hubs would be so important for us, so we don't have to travel. So resources can be in our physical community, so our small business can be nurtured that way. And also, I do believe in the beautification through the Merchant Association, where having the Merchant Association is a support base for our business star affairs. We don't have a lot of that in our district. We only have like one. We need more of that, so business owners would know who is on the block, who's supporting, who's selling what, who's doing what. We do need more from the SBS, Small Business Services. We do need to be able to give to small businesses. Now, I should tell you, in order to get a grant from Small Business Services, you have to run your credit. Now, I'll tell you as a business owner what happened to credit score for business people. It's shot. So you have to be able to find another platform of how you can give a grant or a loan to a small business so they can nurture their business without running their credit, because that's one of the criteria to getting a grant or substantial loan or whatever it is. So being able to support on that level of negotiating with Small Business Services to meet the needs of the small businesses and being able to have like that hub in the district, that's one of the ways. I personally, just as a resident, we go to like different businesses throughout the neighborhood and support local. And I always tell people, support your local mom and pop store, because if they go out of business, that's a beautification of and culture of our community is destroyed. Our local pizzeria, our local restaurants, our local art store, or whatever is it you're selling, music shop, whatever it is. So small businesses, that's it. What was the other question? Is on housing. How do you make housing more affordable? First of all, when it comes to the term affordable housing, if you speak with Paul Graziano is an expert in public housing, and he will give you the numbers, and he'll tell you there are hundreds of thousands of apartments right now, as you guys are here on the conversation, that are out there available, but they're empty because of affordable housing. The metrics of how they have it for affordable housing is not affordable. We have to make it really affordable. New Yorkers are being outpriced in every corner of the globe. So we have to really make it truly affordable so people can afford to live there. People can't even afford to eat. They have to make a decision. Do I put food on my table? Or do I pay my rent? Or do I pay my mortgage? So let's talk about the rental piece of it for the affordable housing. But we have to make sure we come back to truly affordable housing, where the metrics has changed in a way that people can actually afford to live there. So recently, the laws that changed out of the city of Yes with the rezoning depends on if you want to get a commercial property, the city or Eric Adams is forcing you to go up at least 4 stories. So you have this property, this commercial building flat, and you now are forced to have that extra 4-story. You may just have it empty and say, I don't want nobody coming there because it's not my interest. I just want to have this strip of property because Eric Adams is saying we need more affordable housing. How about if we occupy the ones with a favorable cost for families so they can actually live there and occupy it instead of having it empty? And that 4 stories that I was just telling you about end up turning into be homeless shelters or facilities where they accommodate people who are, getting contracts with the city to have people who are substance abuse or whatever the case is. And that's how those spaces end up changing. But if you were to make it where it's affordable housing and fix it into that, then and make it where it's really affordable and cities helping, then that's how we create, you occupy those spaces.
So, Dimple, I think that was a great question, talk about small business. And that's where I'd kind of like to segue into the small business movement of weed shops in the city. Now, I know there's a couple of weed shops in Brooklyn. I'm not sure if they're in your district. So what are your thoughts if there are any weed shops in your district, if any? And if they're not there at this point, if there are any weed shops were to move into your district, what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on the recreational use of marijuana? Obviously, it's legal at this point, not something that you can change. I see you smile. What are your thoughts on that? Are you still getting complaints from the community as far as weed smoking in the streets? What are your thoughts on it since it's legalized in that small business movement? What are you seeing? What are your thoughts? I'm curious on that.
So ironically, only last night I was speaking with one of my neighbors, and this Mercedes vehicle pulled up, and the windows came down, and me and him started. He's a retired cop, so as soon as he saw that, first of all, I never back the street. I always face the street. My husband taught me a lot of stuff, so I was like, once we see that car start pulling up and the windows came up, me and him, we just started moving. We were watching. This car pulled up. These 2 folks that were in the car started smoking. We could smell the weed. But to answer your question, the community board in our district, and I think throughout New York, are the ones who approve and support what's coming to the neighborhood. And they've approved and supported a few of those weed spots. I think they're like 2 or 3 recreational marijuana. They celebrated it and whatnot. What's more shocking to me is that people complain about affording food and affordability for housing and everything else that are priority in life, but they're having these weed shops pop up. My question is, who's really buying these things, and is that really a necessity, in life? Because how are you able to have these big, and these are not stores that are just small little tiny spots. These are like well put together, really big sizes places. I don't know. Every time I drive by to that the new location that I saw, I'm curious as to who's going in because I don't see anybody going in. But I know they must be supported with a massive location that they put up. So I'm not in support of having those things in my district. If I would eliminate them altogether, I would, because we have struggles with our library being open on a Sunday. If I want to take my granddaughter on a Sunday to the library, my 2-year-old granddaughter, I'd love to take her on a Sunday because this is when she comes to see me. I can't take her to the library, it's closed. But this is where some of the funding is also supported. And if we look to see who's getting the license to do this, these are people just like the violence interrupters. These are people who have felonies and who've served jail time and whatnot, the city feel as if they need to pay them back. Pay them back to have a weed shop for real? That's how you pay somebody back? No. We live in an upside down world. That's all I'll say. Things are upside down.
So 100%. And New York City politics is definitely upside down. So, it's been reported that New York City under Eric Adams has spent $9 billion to combat the migrant crisis. I personally believe that number is double than what's even being reported. Just because if we look at all the hotel contracts, if you look at all the money we spent for public safety, to arrest people, and all the other services, I personally think that number is double. Do you think that, and now, to highlight the insanity of it, he went from welcoming the entire world to New York City to now saying and following Trump's administration and the agenda of deporting people who came here illegally. So, and he's even wishy-washy on that, because yesterday he put out another statement saying that some kid shouldn't have been touched by ICE. So it's like, I don't know truly where he stands on the migrant crisis. He's day by day. One day he supports migrants. The next day he's against it. One day he's for open borders. The next day he wants closed borders. But how do you feel New York City handled this situation? And was that money well spent?
So regarding the migrant crisis, first of all, I'm from Guyana, which is a third world country. Guyana does not have an open border crisis policy. So why is a first world country have an open border policy? Tell me. Why is Canada? Does Canada have an open border policy? No. Does Mexico have an open border policy? No. So why should America have an open border policy? Why? So I'm totally against that, because the legal process to come to America, before you even come to America, there's certain exam and tests that you have to do. Before you could come here, you have to check to make sure you don't have a criminal record, so on and so forth. And those are people coming through the right way. So you're just opening up the border. This was one location. Then the Biden administration opened 3 other locations, making it 4 locations for more of influx from different parts because of the overburden and overwork of those workers that had to process those people coming in. So if I say maybe my name is John Smith or Tom Jones or whatever, then you're Tom Jones. Which country are you from? Well, today I want to be from Ecuador. So I'm from Ecuador. So that's what we were dealing with. So unfortunately, because New York City, sanctuary city, they were bussed here from everywhere, whether it be Texas or California or wherever they were coming from. I'm totally against that. And then they were being welcomed here. And I understand that everybody wants to come to a place that is better than where they live. I totally get it. That's why me and my family moved to America for the American dream. But there are a lot of people who came through that path that do not like America. Why are you here if you do not like America? Go back to where you're from, where you feel as if the policies, you know how many people die in this country for the freedoms that we have and we're speaking here about? How many people die? How many women and children don't have a husband or a father at the table, empty chair, and we are going on those freedoms, and you're coming here to say you don't like America or you don't like Americans, but then you want to come here and then get all the taxpayers' money to house you and your family and whatever else, get a free phone, free bed, free food, and free everything, but then you don't like America. So I don't agree with that policy. I feel as if, yes, I understand there are people with crisis, there are people who really want a better life, there are people who really want to come here and work hard. I can respect those people who come and were here before and they want to get naturalized as a citizen and want to pay taxes. Because at the end of the day, it's also about paying taxes, paying your fair share and do what you got to do. But then now they came here to New York. They need to really evaluate the sanctuary city rules and laws, because New York, in my opinion, that need to be talked about. And this is why the influx of people were bussed here, because what did the governor say? If you people are sanctuary city and you want to welcome them, bring them. Take them to that sanctuary city where everybody welcome them. New Yorkers didn't want this. Democrats, Republican, Independent, you talk to people, they did not want this. But it's the elected officials who said we have to keep pumping more money. As always, throw more money at this, throw more money at this, so we can solve the problem. In our district, up to yesterday, there was a woman who have a sign up saying, I'm from Venezuela, I need help. She has 2 children and she's pregnant, but she needs help. How are you pregnant and you need help? How did you get there to begin with 2 children hanging on both sides and saying you're pregnant? So these are some of the crises. And I do believe that some of the funds, I think that what happened with Eric Adams at that point is that he was pressured to find the correct housing and amount of housing for all these people, and he wanted to show he had things under control, when in actuality it was kind of hard to be in control. But like everything else, as a politician, you want to say, listen, I got this, I'm good. But then if you look at the RFPs, you will see through the request for proposals, they were hunting for spaces and for any nonprofit who can house people. People were actually housing those illegal migrants at their house and making a lot of money per month. I remember one person told me they were receiving like $10,000 to house some people.
Yeah.
And they were making big bucks. So, I mean, you know, I don't think it was handled correctly, only because I feel like if it was kind of sprung on everybody, including taxpayers, and we had to deal with this massive influx of people coming in, as well as the administration, I think that the spending towards it was ludicrous, because we as taxpayers, you know, we can't even, if we owe on our light bill or a gas bill, we got to deal with whatever's coming there. And every time you turn around, you got to be careful, because the cameras everywhere looking to charge you for everything. So we press as taxpayers for everything, but then we have to flush our money back towards, you know, whatever the city decide to do. I hope I answered your question.
No, you're doing fantastic. You got a lot of support from our friends and listeners. One here in particular, Chronicles of the Collapse. If you get a chance to see it, says, Dimple, you're amazing and 100% on point. Absolutely. I think you're doing a fantastic job. Again, I'll go back to, I think you're extremely genuine. I think you're real.
Thank you.
And I think you speak with passion. And that's what I like. I think you speak with passion. It shows that you actually care. And it doesn't come off as it's phony. It comes off as it's real and completely genuine. So with that being said, I mean, there's a laundry list of quality of life concerns that's going on in this city. We talk about illegal immigration. I agree with you. Should not be open borders. These other countries understand that many of these countries are letting the spoils of these countries out, and they're coming to America. Yes. Do we support immigration? Of course. At some point, we're all generations of family from other parts of this world, including myself, including John. But our families came here, and they came here as families. And they wanted a better life. But we are getting people from the perils of different countries, illegal military-age males that are not coming here with families here because of opportunity. You know, Tren de Aragua. But there's a laundry list of crime that we talk about. We talk about even just quality of life, weed shops, smoking weed in the street, different things. As far as your district also, this is a main we see that's still going on, and it's prevalent, is these pro-Palestinian protests, pro-Israel protests, where we see paid agitators. Do you see any of this in your district? What are the concerns of your community as far as pro-Palestinian, pro-Israel protest? I know my mother says she's concerned. She's Jewish. She sees some things in the street in Sheepshead Bay. What are you seeing? What are you hearing from your constituents? What are you hearing from the residents?
Yeah, we do have a big population of our constituents here are Jewish. And of course, we stand with our Jewish community, of course. And at Brooklyn College, which is not physically in the district, but is in, you know, the area, we've had some of those protests. And I know that the police had to interject into the space and stuff like that. But at the same time, there have been some amount of protests just at the college, and we have like small ones here and there, but nothing big compared to what's seen in Manhattan. But we do have our Jewish community who would come out and, you know, stand in solidarity with the individuals who are still being held, and they meet in a certain part of the neighborhood every Sunday, and they just have a little rally to kind of remember those people who are still out there, who were kept by Hamas, and they're out there every Sunday and with the pictures and so on. But yeah, we don't see a whole lot of that physically in our neighborhood, because our neighborhood pretty much supports, you know, our Jewish community. So physically in the district, we don't see that because we don't have that issue. But again, it's just like the college, Brooklyn College, or other parts.
So, Dimple, we kept you a while. It's about an hour or 20 minutes. Anything you want to tell people in New York City? You know, why should they come out in the Democratic primary? The June 24th Democratic primary, District 46. Get out and vote Dimple Willabus.
So if you're a registered Democrat, exercise your civic duty. And it's important to vote in a primary, because if there are two Republicans running against each other, or they're two Democrats, or they're two independent candidates, because in some district they do have two Republicans running, or whatever it is. Just understand what a primary means and how critical it is for you to choose the right candidate, because that candidate will go forward in November and continue to represent the district against whoever is running on other lines, whether it be other lines as an independent or Republican or Democrat, whatever it is. So it's imperative that you do that, because you will determine who will be that representative in that space. And if you don't vote, then you did vote for the person you don't want. And if you don't vote, don't complain. So that's pretty much it, because people gripe about everything under the sun, and then you ask them, do you vote? No, I am a religious person, I don't vote. Then that's what you get.
It's unfortunate, but voter apathy is it's almost like an illness in New York City. I mean, maybe this entire country, but especially New York City, where people have the right to vote and they should vote and they don't get out there. And again, I agree with you. You get what you deserve. I mean, you need to have your vote. You need to have a say, and you should have some concern. So with that being said, it's almost an hour and a half into it. Your stamina has been great. You've been so articulate. We always say this, let's have a little fun. We know you're an educator. You're a mom, a grandmother, a wife. You're a political candidate. You're an impressive person. What do you do for fun? Let's hear about, you have any hobbies? Are you what are you into? I see you thinking, I know you work so hard. Besides working so hard, but what do you do for fun?
That's one of the only questions that have me stumped. What do I
Talk
do?
politics.
My
Is it debating?
You know what's interesting? Let me tell you a day of fun. Because my husband, has a very busy schedule, and my children do so much. My daughter Anaya, who, like I said, she's at Princeton. She is in Spain as we speak. And my older daughter does not live with us because she's married. She lives in Long Island. So for fun, and what I enjoy is my children and my husband and my grand. And Sunday is the only day we're able to sit at the table and pray and eat and go to church. So from church, when we come home, we do this. My husband is probably going to strangle me for telling the truth, but I love eating pizza on Sunday with wings. Yeah, you could hold that against me. So that's what I love to do on Sundays, and watch a good movie. And we sit together, we enjoy our granddaughter. And that's what I do for fun, to unwind. I love spending time with my husband and children and my grand. And that's like peace and joy for me, or volunteering. We have an organization that I mentioned to you guys offline that my husband and I started. And this is an MOS organization. This was birthed during the pandemic, when Captain at the time, Mastronardi, was hit in the face with a baseball bat. And of course, the administration was saying no crime happening, and the crimes are just low and whatnot. Police are being, hurt and so on. So from that, my husband was physically present at that point. Thereafter, fast forward, we started an organization called First Responders Lions Club, and we have some of the best members in the world. We have some of the best detectives that are in that organization, best NYPD corrections. We have corrections in there too. And, that's what I do for fun. I go and volunteer wherever I can. My younger daughter has an organization, is 9 years old. The organization is called Stalwarts Youth, and she travels to different countries, different states, and different schools, and speak on the importance of literacy and the empowerment of the youth. So those are things that I do for fun. But the most important thing is my family. No matter what happens in the world, how crazy the world is, if you don't have a sanctuary to come home to, then something is wrong. Nothing can replace your family. I don't care how busy the world gets. I will stop, and call me whatever you want to call me, but I have to spend time with my children and family, because that's where I'm planting my seeds, and that's where I'm looking for my legacy.
So, Dimple, we're hearing that your husband's a Jets fan, though. I mean, and
Yes, he is. Oh, how do you know he's a Jets fan? How do you know he's a Jets fan? Somebody said that?
I saw in the comments too. They said he's a big Jets fan. I know you said you watch TV. Do you watch the football games with him on Sunday?
I don't understand the games. I don't know how to. Let me tell you what happened. So one day I brought home, I think it was a Mets hat. My husband threw it out, literally. This was a few years ago. It was like 10 years ago. I didn't know the differences with the teams and whatnot. And my son, I was taking my son to the doctor, and then there was a Mets. This guy was wearing some like Mets stuff and was promoting the Mets. And I said to my son, "Look, go and get one of the stuff they give." My son said no, and he walked past. And I was like, "Sorry." I didn't understand what was happening, because I don't really understand the games and the teams. But that's it. But they're big Jets fans and Yankee fans and whatever. I don't really know much about that stuff. Yeah. I'm a volleyball player. I played volleyball and did track in high school.
All right, so we had about 7,500 people on here this morning. Thanks everybody for joining. Anybody new, do us a favor, go over to YouTube at The Finest Unfiltered, like, share, and subscribe. Put on the notification bell. We appreciate it. We appreciate you, Dimple, for coming on, spending time with us. It was a great conversation. And I personally, I just want a message to Mercedes Narcisse. Let's debate. Let's hear the debate. I want to see the debate. So, I'm excited for that. Eric, you got anything before we get going?
I tell you what, Dimple, I'd be proud if we have the opportunity. If you get Mercedes on here, we'll have the debate right at the Finest Unfiltered on New York's Finest Retired Unfiltered podcast. I think it'd be a great opportunity with a list of questions. I think you're extremely genuine. I love your passion. I'm super impressed. You see, you talk so kind about your family and still passionate. You talk about you love spending time with your family, and family's number one. And I think that's something so important in politics. And politics should be part of an extended family, right? Making the community part of your family. It's unfortunate that politics has been a roadmap for financial success, and everyone should have financial success. But the bedrock and the foundation should be family. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you here today. I'd love to have you again. Let's get that debate going. Let's rock. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me, Eric and John. It was a pleasure. And to your viewers, thank you for listening, and thank you for your questions. And if it's God's plan for me to win, I do believe that as a Christian, that whatever is God's plan will be, and nothing can stop that, regardless of the forces out there. And, we see what happens in the primary. Today is the 4th of June. And the primary starts on June. Today's the 4th, yes. We have 10 days before the primary early voting starts. The early voting is from the 14th to the 22nd, and election day is the 24th. So for those of you who are watching, please vote early, or please go out and vote. And thank you so much for your time and effort. I appreciate everyone.
That's right. Dimple Willabus, outstanding. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you again.
All right, guys. Yeah, and that was it. And like I said, if you go over to our YouTube or Instagram or LinkedIn, you'll see all the links for Dimple's campaign and all that. So if anybody wants to help her work on a campaign, knock on doors, you want to donate, you want to read up more on her, check those links out. So we appreciate it, everybody. Finest Unfiltered today at 15:05 or excuse me, at 17:05 or 5:05 p.m. Eastern time. The Executive Perspective, hosted by retired Chief Rob Lukash and retired NYPD Inspector Ron Layson. They're going to be delving in, is the NYPD's check engine light on, right? And they're going to go into, they're going to talk about, the hiring crisis, all the stuff that's happening, and what the NYPD needs to do to get back on track. So like I said, all the links for Dimple's there. We appreciate it. We appreciate you spending time with us. Great conversation. And thanks everybody for joining us. We appreciate you guys.
I got to say a quick shout out to my husband. I forgot. Hi, Winston. Love you.
But
at least he's a Yankees fan. So we could, that's that. We got, shout out Winston.
Dimple, thank you for taking your time out. You did outstanding. It's been a pleasure. Vote for Dimple. Support her. Take care.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate you.
Outstanding.
Take care, guys.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community, but who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning, and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.